If you've ever dreamed of serving justice to someone who wronged you, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll hear today. Because what started with one screenshot would soon escalate into a battle of truth versus fantasy, and the fallout would be more explosive than either of us could have imagined. Derek didn't disappear to cool off. He disappeared to plan. The first sign was social media. I was at my desk the next morning trying to work through a headache that felt like grief when I saw the post. A black and white selfie of Derek looking wounded. Caption: sometimes you don't realize you're in a toxic relationship until your partner reveals who they really are. Petty, spiteful, cruel. Then the line that made my stomach drop. Texting my ex to shame me. That's a new low. Exploring my options. His mom, Darlene Hayes, commented within minutes. Come home, sweetie. You don't deserve this. His dad, Frank Hayes, followed. That woman was never good enough for you. I stared at the screen, feeling something inside me harden. Not heartbreak, clarity, because public posts invite public truth. And within an hour, a new comment appeared from an account I didn't recognize at first. A man's name, a profile photo of a couple smiling at a lake. It read, "Hold up. Is this the Derek who messaged Chloe last month asking if she ever thinks about what could have been because she blocked him?" The comment disappeared almost immediately. Deleted, but not fast enough. I had already screenshotted it. Then came misstep number 2. That afternoon, my bank called me. "Hi, Miss Boss," the representative said carefully. "We flagged suspicious login attempts on your savings account. Someone tried accessing it from an unrecognized device." My blood went cold. My savings account wasn't shared. It was in my name only. Money I'd saved before. Derek's phone. So while he was posting about being shamed, he was also trying to check how much money I had, like he was calculating what he could take. That evening, he came back not alone. He walked in with his sister Simone Hayes and his mom, Darlene, like they were arriving for an intervention. Darlene didn't even sit down before she started. "We need to address your behavior," she said, voice trembling with practiced outrage. I looked at Derek. He stood behind them, quiet, letting them fight for him. "My behavior?" I asked. Simone crossed her arms. Texting his ex was emotional abuse, Brianna. Emotional abuse. The words hung in the air like a costume. Too big, too dramatic, too fake. I tilted my head. Interesting. Then I lifted my phone. "Should we talk about why Derek tried logging into my savings account today?" Derek's eyes flashed. Darlene froze. Simone's mouth tightened. And in that silence, I felt it. The shift. Because for the first time, they realized this wasn't going to be a scene where I cried and begged and made Derek look innocent. This was going to be the scene where the truth walked into the room and refused to leave. And Derek was already sweating. When I asked about the savings account, Derek didn't answer right away. He did that thing he always did when he got caught. He let his face go blank, as if silence could erase the evidence. Darlene recovered first. She lifted her chin, eyes narrowing like she'd found a new angle. "He was trying to see if you were hiding money," she said, as if that made it noble. "If you're planning to leave him broke." "I'm not married to him," I cut in calmly. "And it's not hiding if it's an account I opened before I even met him." Simone made a sharp, dismissive sound. "So, you admit you've been keeping money separate?" I almost laughed. Almost. Because the logic was so twisted it was practically artistic. Derek has his own checking account, access to the fridge, the shower, the Wi-Fi, and my patience, which is running out. Derek finally spoke, voice tight. "You don't get it. You don't understand what you did." "What I did," I repeated. He stepped forward, eyes glassy and furious, like he'd rehearsed this in the mirror. "You sent that to Chloe to destroy me," he said. "You wanted her to laugh at me. You wanted to make me look pathetic." I held his gaze steady. "Derek, you were standing in my kitchen telling me you should have stayed with her. You were praising her like she was a saint and treating me like a burden. I didn't put words in your mouth. Darlene snapped. You still had no right to involve her. And he had a right to involve her by bringing her up every time he wants to win an argument. I asked. Silence. For a moment, they all looked at Derek, waiting for him to correct me, to deny it, to pretend he wasn't the one who lit the match. He didn't because he couldn't. Simone's voice softened. But it wasn't kindness. It was strategy. Brianna, we're here because Derek is hurting, she said. He feels cornered. Attacked. Attacked. I echoed, looking at Derek. By the truth. Derek's nostrils flared. You're making me the villain. You made yourself the villain the second you tried to log into my savings account, I said. What were you hoping to find? A number to scream about. A reason to demand half. Darlene's eyes widened like I'd said something obscene. Simone snapped. He's been under stress. You know that. Stress doesn't give you permission to break into someone's financial life, I said. Derek's jaw clenched. And then, because he couldn't win with logic, he tried emotion. He put a hand to his chest and said, I've been giving you everything. My love, my time, my loyalty. I stared at him. My loyalty, he repeated louder, like volume could make it true. I slowly unlocked my phone and opened the screenshot folder. Darlene and Simone both leaned forward in smell a secret. I didn't even have to raise my voice. I also have screenshots of you texting your coworker Jade about how unfair it is that she has a boyfriend who actually spoils her. I said. 2 weeks ago and the week before that your message about how she looked dangerous in that dress. Simone's face tightened. That's not what that means. Darlene turned sharply to Derek. Derek. His eyes flashed with panic. It's nothing. It's work banter. Work banter? I asked. So, you're allowed to say another woman looks dangerous, but I'm emotionally abusive for sending your own words to your ex. Darlene's mouth opened, then closed. Because this was the problem with coming into someone's home to accuse them. You assume they're unprepared. You assume they're still in love enough to protect you. I wasn't. Simone stood up abruptly, grabbing her purse strap like she needed something solid. Okay, she said, voice brittle. This isn't productive. No, I agreed. It's honest. That's why it feels so uncomfortable. Derek's eyes were wet now, but it wasn't remorse. It was humiliation, pure and poisonous. He looked at me like I'd robbed him of something he was entitled to. His story, his image, his ability to walk away painted gold, while I stayed behind painted black. They left 10 minutes later. Darlene swept out first, furious, muttering something about ungrateful women. Simone followed, shooting Derek a look I couldn't read, half disgust, half loyalty. Derek lingered at the door, face hard. This is why Chloe left you, I said quietly. He flinched, and for the first time since this started, I saw something real in his eyes. Fear. Because he finally understood I wasn't fighting to keep him. I was fighting to get my life back. That night, I chose the couch. Not because I was punished. Because I refused to share a bed with someone who looked at me like an opponent. Half asleep when I heard it. Derek's voice, low, urgent, coming from the bedroom. I held my breath. He was on the phone. I just need $5 grand, he whispered. Just until I sort things out. Pause. No, I can't ask her. She'll say no. She's being vindictive. Another pause, longer. Then Derek's tone shifted, smaller, softer, almost childish. Please, Dad. I felt my stomach sink, as if my body already knew what his father would say. Frank Hayes wasn't a warm man, but he wasn't stupid either. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. A sigh, a firm no. Then Derek's voice cracked like a spoiled door. You don't get it, he hissed. She's destroying me. He hung up hard. A second later, something hit the wall. Not heavy enough to break drywall, but heavy enough to announce rage. I lay there in the dark, heart pounding, realizing something I hadn't wanted to admit. Derek wasn't grieving the relationship. He was grieving the loss of control. The next morning, he tried a different angle. He called my mother, not because he respected her, because he thought she'd pressure me. My phone buzzed at 9:12 a.m. Mom. The moment I answered, she said, "Brianna, what is going on?" Her voice was careful, controlled, but I could hear irritation under it. "He called you?" I said. "He did," she replied. "He said you're financially controlling him, that you're isolating him, that you won't let him access money." I closed my eyes. Of course, that's what he said. Because in Derek's world, boundaries are abuse when they don't benefit him. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Derek has his own account, his own paycheck. He's not starving. He's angry I won't give him access to my savings, the money I had before him." There was a pause. Then my mother exhaled, slowly. "He didn't mention any of that. He also didn't." Wasn't dramatic. She didn't yell. She simply said, "I'll handle it." And she did. I didn't hear the call, but I saw the results. Derek stormed into the apartment that afternoon like a man walking into war. His face was red with fury, his mouth already loaded with accusations. "What did you tell your mother?" he demanded. "I told her the truth," I said. "You turned her against me." "She asked me questions," I replied. I answered. Derek's hands shook. "She threatened me." He spat. "She said, if I keep lying, she'll tell people about things I've done." I lifted an eyebrow. "Like what?" His mouth opened, then snapped shut because he knew exactly what. He knew my mother didn't make threats unless she had receipts. He stood there breathing hard, then suddenly flipped the script again. His favorite move. "You know what?" he said, voice trembling. "I want a clean break. I want a divorce." "Well, not divorce. We're not married, but whatever. I want to end this, and I want half of everything. Half of everything in my apartment with my name on the deed, my furniture, my savings, my peace." He said it like it was a natural right, like 4 years of dating entitled him to my foundation. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I nodded. "Okay," I said. He blinked, thrown off. "Okay," he repeated like the word didn't compute. "Okay," I said again calmly. "If you want to end it, we'll end it, and you can talk to a lawyer about your half." His face twisted. "You're not even going to fight for us?" I reached for my laptop, opened it in front of him, typed the words that made his eyes widen. "Family law attorney consultation." "I'm fighting for myself," I said quietly. "That's the difference." Derek's lips parted in disbelief. He'd wanted me frantic. He'd wanted me desperate. Instead, I was clinical. He watched me scroll, watched me click. Relationship where you screamed you should have stayed with your ex, tried to access my savings, and lied to my mother. He flinched, and I saw it again. That panic. He pulled out his phone, thumb already moving. He called someone immediately. I didn't have to ask who. "Dad," he said the second the line connected, voice shaking. "She's giving up. She's not even trying. She's letting it die." I listened to Frank's muffled response through the speaker. Deep, tired, blunt. Then Frank said something that made Derek's face go slack. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught the spine of it. "You told her you wished you'd stayed with someone else. Why should she fight for you to keep treating her like trash?" Derek's eyes glistened, not with guilt, with rage that his own father wasn't backing the fantasy. He hung up hard. Then he stared at me like I'd personally orchestrated the entire collapse of his life. "This isn't over," he said again, quieter now, more dangerous. And I believed him, because Derek wasn't the type to walk away when he lost. He was the type to burn the whole building down and blame you for the smoke. That was the moment I realized the screenshot hadn't started the war. It had just exposed the battlefield. And somewhere out there, Derek was already recruiting people to join his side. Derek leaned hard into the victim role after that. Not quietly, not privately, publicly, loudly. If there was a platform that allowed captions, he used it. Instagram was first. A photo of him staring out a rain-streaked window, jaw clenched, hoodie pulled low. The kind of image designed to invite concern, without saying anything concrete. The caption read, "When the person you trusted most turns cruel, you realize healing has to start somewhere." Asking for support while I rebuild. Below it, his Venmo handle. I stared at the screen longer than I want to admit. Not because it hurt, because it was surreal watching someone weaponize sadness like a business model. People commented with heart emojis and vague affirmations. Stay strong. You deserve better. Healing isn't linear. I didn't engage. I didn't correct. I didn't comment because I was done arguing with fiction. Then something happened that cracked his narrative clean in half. Someone sent him $20. The note read, "For therapy you need it, Chloe." I found out because Derek came home shaking. He stood in the living room staring at his phone like it had insulted him personally. "She did this to humiliate me," he hissed again. I glanced at the screen. "You asked for money. That was supposed to be anonymous support." "You put your name and face on it," I said. "That's not anonymous. That's advertising." His jaw tightened. He blocked Chloe everywhere within minutes. Then had what can only be described as a breakdown. Pacing, muttering, opening and closing apps like he could erase the truth if he moved fast enough. But the damage was done because the story he was telling about being abandoned and abused wasn't matching the behavior people were starting to see, especially at work. We didn't work at the same company, but word travels when someone is dramatic enough. 2 days later, I got a message on LinkedIn from a woman named Lena Price. Her profile said she worked in HR at Derek's company. The message was careful, measured.
Brianna.
I'm reaching out because Derek has been sharing some concerning claims at work. He's told several people you're financially controlling and preventing him from leaving. He's also asked coworkers for loans to escape. I wouldn't normally reach out like this, but he showed up yesterday with a new designer backpack and shoes, so the story isn't lining up. I thought you should know. I exhaled slowly. Then I thanked her and forwarded the message to my lawyer. Because lies get heavy when you stack them. And Derek was building a tower. That same afternoon, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was Marcus Lee, Derek's coworker, the one he'd accused me of isolating him from. The one he'd hinted was too close to me in his stories because Derek couldn't imagine a man speaking to a woman without ulterior motives. I opened the door. Marcus looked uncomfortable, tense.
"Hey," he said.
"We need to talk." "No, we don't," I replied calmly. "But you can say what you came to say." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Derek's telling people you're dangerous, that you monitor his accounts and won't let him leave." He asked if he could crash at my place. I raised an eyebrow. And my girlfriend's pregnant," Marcus said flatly. "And furious, because Derek's been texting her, too." That stopped me. "What do you mean?" He pulled out his phone and showed me the messages. "Derek late at night. You deserve better than a guy who ignores you. If things ever change, I'd be there. Don't let yourself settle." Marcus swallowed. "She told me he hit on her at a work happy hour last month. She shut it down."
"He didn't."
My stomach twisted, not in shock, but in confirmation. Because Derek didn't want Chloe.
"He didn't want me."
He wanted options. When one fantasy died, he immediately started shopping for another. "And now," Marcus continued, "he's telling people I'm enabling abuse because I didn't help him escape." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Of course he is." Marcus shook his head. "He's trying to blow up my relationship because I turned him down. I won't let that happen. Would you be willing to tell a lawyer this?" I asked. Absolutely, he said without hesitation. I'm not letting him lie his way through other people's lives. That night, Derek came home carrying 3 shopping bags. Not groceries, retail therapy. He dropped them on the couch with theatrical flair. I deserve nice things, he said, daring me to object. After what you've put me through. I stared at the bags, designer labels, clean edges, not a single clearance tag in sight. Is this before or after asking coworkers for escape money? I asked. His face darkened. You humiliated me, he snapped. You texted my ex. You made me look pathetic. You were already saying it, I replied. I just let her hear it. He picked up one of his shoes and flung it across the room. It missed me. It didn't miss the TV. The screen cracked with a sharp final sound. He froze. So did I. That, I said evenly, is coming out of whatever imaginary half you think you're entitled to. He screamed. Actual screaming, raw, furious, uncontained. Then he stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. The next morning, I met my lawyer, Denise Harper. She was calm in a way that immediately made me feel safer. Not soft, sharp. When I told her everything, screenshots, bank login attempts, messages, coworkers, she didn't look surprised. She smiled thinly. People like Derek always think the loudest story wins, she said. They forget evidence doesn't care about volume. Derek hired his own lawyer 2 days later. Elliot Moore, apparently top-rated according to Google. Denise chuckled when I said his name. Charges aggressively, she said. Struggles when facts are involved. Mediation was scheduled for the following week. Derek arrived like he was auditioning for a magazine spread, designer jacket, new watch, fresh haircut. He sat back in his chair, arms crossed, face practiced into wounded confidence. He opened with, I need financial support to maintain the lifestyle I've grown accustomed to. Denise didn't even blink. She slid a folder across the table. Your client spent $3,700 on non-essential retail items in the last 7 days, she said calmly, while simultaneously claiming financial distress. Elliot turned slowly toward Derek. You spent how much? I needed to look professional, Derek snapped. For this process. Professional, Denise echoed. Interesting choice of word. The mediator, Ruth Adler, an older woman with tired eyes and no patience for nonsense, leaned forward. You're employed full-time, she said to Derek.
No.
Children. No shared property. What exactly is the hardship? He emotionally abused me, Derek said immediately.
How?
Ruth asked. He texted my ex after I expressed regret, Derek replied. Denise tilted her head. After he said he wished he'd married her. Silence, Denise continued. We also have statements from Marcus Lee and Lena Price regarding inappropriate advances and false claims made at his workplace. Derek went pale. How did you? They came forward voluntarily, Denise said. Your behavior affected their lives. Elliot asked for a break. I watched through the glass as he hissed at Derek in the hallway. You hit on a coworker, lied about abuse, and spent thousands while claiming hardship. Do you understand how bad this looks? When they returned, Elliot cleared his throat. My client is willing to consider a clean split, he said. Each party keeps their own assets and debts. No support. Derek snapped his head toward him. No, I deserve compensation for my pain. Ruth snorted. Pain, she repeated. Sir, this isn't a divorce court. This is about property, damages, and conduct. And even if it weren't, wishing you'd stayed with another woman isn't exactly a winning argument. We left without an agreement. As we walked out, Denise leaned toward me. He's running out of moves, she said quietly. That's when people like him get reckless. I nodded because I could feel it, too. The desperation was building. And Derek had never been someone who accepted losing quietly. Denise was right. When Derek realized he couldn't win with charm, lies, or lawyers, he tried something else. The week after mediation, things went quiet. Too quiet. No dramatic posts, no public meltdowns, no angry confrontations in the apartment. He moved around like a ghost. Eyes down, phone glued to his hand.
Slam.
Open carefully. Quiet footsteps. I muted my mic and stood from a hallway.
I saw it.
My guitar, the one I had bought 5 years before I met him, being lifted off the stand. My stomach dropped. Derek, I said sharply. He flinched, then straightened. I'm selling it. What? I stepped closer. Put it down. It's marital property, he said, reciting something he'd clearly rehearsed. I'm entitled to my share.
We're not married, I said.
And I bought that before you even existed in my life. He ignored me and kept moving. I followed him outside. There was a truck parked at the curb. A man stood by it, looking uncomfortable, phone in hand. What's going on? The guy asked. That's stolen property, I said immediately. I have the receipt. Photos. Proof, Derek snapped. She's exaggerating. I pulled out my phone, showed the buyer the listing.
My name wasn't on it. Derek's was.
The man's face changed instantly. I don't want trouble. Good, I said, because I'm calling the police. Derek's face twisted. You're ruining everything. You tried to steal from me, I replied calmly. That's already ruined. The buyer backed away, helped unload the guitar, and left without another word. Derek stood there shaking. The police arrived 10 minutes later. I showed receipts, photos, proof the items were mine, purchased years before Derek. Derek claimed it was a misunderstanding. They didn't buy it. They warned him firmly. One more incident and it would be charges. That night, he didn't speak to me, but at 10:03 p.m., I heard him on the landline. We didn't even use the landline except he knew I could overhear. Chloe, he whispered. I froze. I know I messed up, but we were good once, he said. We could be again. She doesn't have to know. Silence. Fantasy worlds to escape into. The final court hearing happened 3 weeks later. Derek showed up looking exhausted. No designer jacket, no performance smile. But he had one last move, a desperate one. Someone's pregnant, he said suddenly. The room froze. A woman I've been seeing says it's mine, he added quickly. Like speed could make it true. If this ends badly for me, I'll be responsible for a child. The judge didn't hesitate. Do you have proof? Derek swallowed. Not with me. The judge's expression hardened. So, you have a claim with no documentation, no medical record, and no sworn statement. Elliot's face tightened. Your Honor, my client is under emotional distress. Then he should stop inventing emergencies, the judge said. This court deals in facts. Elliot looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. The judge was unmoved. Mr. Hayes, she said, voice sharp, you've wasted this court's time with false claims, attempted theft, and now a fabricated claim of pregnancy. She didn't even hesitate. Each party keeps their premarital assets and debts. Mr. Hayes will pay $1,200 for the damaged television and attempted sale of property. Any further objections? Elliot shook his head. Outside the courtroom, Derek lost it. You destroyed my life, he screamed. I gave you my best years. For years, I said quietly. And you spent them wishing you'd chosen someone else. His mother tried to calm him. His father didn't. Enough, Frank said, tired and final. You caused this. And then, like the universe was closing the loop, people started arriving. Marcus, Lena, Marcus's pregnant girlfriend, who looked Derek straight in the eye and said, You tried to ruin my relationship because my man rejected you. You're pathetic. Derek couldn't respond. And then Chloe pulled up with her husband. They weren't there for him. They had an appointment at the courthouse before leaving for their honeymoon. Chloe recognized Derek immediately. This is your court date." Her husband glanced at Derek, confused. "Is this the ex who kept messaging you?" Chloe nodded.
Yeah.
Then she looked at me. "You're Brianna," she said. "Thank you. Your message helped us stop pretending." They walked away hand in hand. Derek didn't cry. He just stood there watching the last door close. The fallout was quick. He lost his job after Marcus filed a formal complaint, moved back in with his parents, still obsessed with Chloe, still scrolling wedding photos that would never include him. As for me, I kept my home, my belongings, my peace. I started therapy, not retail therapy. Joined a hiking group, went on a date with a man named Evan, who laughed at the story and said, "At least my ex only stole my Netflix password." Yesterday, an unknown number texted, "Brianna, I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I replied with one word, "No," and blocked it. I don't regret sending that screenshot. The truth didn't destroy Derek.
It just stopped protecting him.
If he'd been honest instead of cruel, we could have ended quietly. Instead, he chased a fantasy and lost everything. The courtroom scene was the climax of it all. When Derek made his desperate claim about a pregnancy, thinking it would force the court to show him leniency, I felt a surge of satisfaction when the judge saw right through it. "So, you have a claim with no documentation, no medical record, and no sworn statement," she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. That was the moment Derek's entire house of cards came tumbling down. His face went from pale to ghostly white as he realized his last desperate lie had failed. The judge's final words sealed his fate. "Mr. Hayes, you've wasted this court's time with false claims, attempted theft, and now a fabricated claim of pregnancy. Each party keeps their premarital assets and debts. Mr. Hayes will pay $1,200 for the damaged television and attempted sale of property." The best part was watching his father's reaction. Frank Hayes, who had defended his son throughout this ordeal, finally said what needed to be said. "Enough. You caused this." But the true satisfaction came as we left the courthouse, and the people whose lives Derek had tried to ruin appeared one by one to confront him. Marcus and his pregnant girlfriend, Lena from HR, and finally Chloe with her new husband. Each encounter was another nail in the coffin of Derek's fabricated narrative. When Chloe looked at me and said, "Thank you. Your message helped us stop pretending," I felt a sense of validation that no court victory could provide. Derek stood there, speechless, watching as all the people he had manipulated and lied about walked away without him. That was the moment I knew my revenge was complete, not just in the legal sense, but in the moral one too. Looking back, I realized that the screenshot wasn't the beginning of Derek's downfall. It was simply the moment the truth refused to stay hidden anymore. People often say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I've come to believe that justice is a dish best served with evidence. The most satisfying part wasn't seeing Derek lose. It was seeing the truth win. In a world where people can craft whatever narrative they want online and in person, there's something deeply satisfying about concrete facts cutting through the fiction. What I learned through this experience is that you don't need to manufacture revenge when someone's own actions will eventually bring about their consequences. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop protecting someone from the truth of their own behavior. I also learned that real strength isn't about fighting back with the same weapons as your attacker. It's about maintaining your integrity while they lose theirs. I could have stooped to Derek's level, spreading rumors or playing games, but instead, I collected facts, stayed calm, and let the evidence speak for itself. In the end, that was more devastating to him than any emotional outburst.
Could have been.
Today, I'm in a better place, not just because Derek is gone, but because I reclaimed my power. I learned that my worth isn't determined by how someone else treats me, but by how I treat myself. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop making excuses for someone who consistently makes excuses for their own bad behavior. The silence after the courtroom was louder than any of Derek's screams. It settled into the apartment like dust, coating every surface, filling every corner. For the first week, I didn't even try to clean it. I just walked through the quiet spaces, letting the stillness sink into my bones. I'd sleep in, not out of laziness, but because I could. I'd make coffee and drink it while it was still hot, a luxury I hadn't realized I'd been missing for 4 years. I'd sit on my couch, the one he'd thrown a shoe at, and watch the morning light stream through the window, unobstructed by his drama. It was in one of these quiet moments, about a week after the final hearing, that my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart didn't even skip a beat anymore. I was getting used to this. The message was simple, pathetic in its desperation.
Brianne, I'm sorry. Can we talk?
I stared at the words, feeling nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. It was like reading a spam email for a product I'd never wanted. I typed a single letter, N, then corrected myself.
No.
I hit send, and before the message had even registered as delivered, I blocked the number. It was the final act of closing a door I never wanted to open again. I didn't regret sending that screenshot. The truth didn't destroy Derek. It just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own actions. If he'd been honest instead of cruel, if he'd communicated instead of manipulated, we could have ended quietly, with a sad but respectful parting of ways. Instead, he chose to chase a fantasy, and in doing so, he lost everything. That was real. But the story doesn't quite end there, because Derek's version of reality had always been a performance, and performers hate an empty stage. The quiet, for him, was unbearable. 2 weeks after he moved back in with his parents, the performance began again, this time on a stage he thought was safe from me, his family's private Facebook group. I didn't see it myself, of course. My mother, bless her heart, had become my unofficial intelligence operative. She sent me a screenshot of the post with the simple message, "You're not going to believe this." It was a masterpiece of victimhood. Derek had posted a long, rambling paragraph about how he'd been systematically abused and financially entrapped by a calculating and cold-hearted woman. He described me as someone who had slowly isolated him from his loved ones and used his love against him before executing a calculated campaign to destroy his reputation and leave him with nothing. He ended with a plea for prayer and support during this difficult time of healing and recovery. The comments that followed were exactly what you'd expect. His mother, Darlene, posted a string of crying emojis and wrote, "My poor baby, so strong to finally speak your truth." His sister, Simone, wrote, "We always knew something was off about her. So glad you're safe now." Even a few aunts and cousins chimed in with messages of support and condemnation for the evil woman who had done this. I read through the comments with a strange sense of detachment. It was like watching a poorly written movie where the villain is so cartoonishly evil that you can't even take them seriously. The only thing that bothered me was the sheer audacity of it. He had lost. He had been proven a liar in court, in his workplace, and by his own ex-girlfriend. And yet, here he was, trying to rewrite history one more time. That's when I realized that my victory wasn't complete. The legal battle was over, but the narrative battle was still raging. And in the court of public opinion, especially within his family, he was still trying to paint me as the villain. I could have ignored it. I could have blocked them all and moved on with my life. But as I sat there, looking at the evidence of his latest lie, I felt that same quiet focus I had felt in the kitchen on the night this all began. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was done. And being done means you don't let people get away with lying about you, not even in a private Facebook group. I thought about my options. I could ask my mom to post a rebuttal, but that would just drag her into the mud. I could create a fake account and defend myself, but that felt cowardly. And then it hit me. The most powerful weapon I had wasn't my words. It was his. I spent the next hour carefully curating a collection of screenshots. Not all of them, just the ones that told the most damning story. The audio transcript from the doorbell camera where he wished he'd married Chloe. Chloe's text messages exposing his lies about money and his car. The bank security alert about the login attempt on my savings account. The LinkedIn message from HR detailing his workplace lies and financial begging. Marcus's testimony about him hitting on his pregnant girlfriend. The police report from the attempted theft of my guitar. And finally, a photo of the cracked TV screen, with the court order for him to pay for the damages circled in red. I compiled them all into a single, easy-to-read PDF file. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I sent a friend request to his cousin, Sarah, the one person in his family who had always seemed vaguely reasonable. She accepted within an hour. I didn't write a long, angry message. I didn't explain myself or justify my actions. I simply sent her the PDF with one sentence. Since he's telling his version of the story, I thought you should all see the evidence. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. My phone started buzzing with notifications from my mother, who was still in the family group. Sarah had posted the file. She didn't add any commentary of her own. She just wrote, "I think everyone should see this before they make any more comments." The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The first few minutes of silence in the comment section must have been them all opening the file and scrolling through the evidence. Then, the first comment appeared, from an uncle I'd only met once. "Derek, what is this? Is this real?" Chaos erupted. Darlene's comments were deleted almost as quickly as she posted them, first in defense of her son, then in angry denial. Simone tried to claim the screenshots were faked, that I had photoshopped them to destroy him, a claim that was quickly dismantled by other, more tech-savvy family members who pointed out the consistency of the timestamps and interfaces. Derek himself didn't comment. He couldn't. What could he possibly say? The evidence was overwhelming. It wasn't just my word against his anymore. It was his words, his actions, his own digital footprint, all laid bare for the people who had been blindly supporting him. The private group went from a shrine to his victimhood to a courtroom where he was being tried and convicted by his own family. The final nail in the coffin came from an unexpected source, Frank Hayes, his father. He didn't post a comment. He simply posted a link to the public court records showing the final judgment and the order for Derek to pay damages. Then he wrote one sentence. "This is the truth. The discussion is over." With that, he shut down the comments on the post. The performance was over. The curtain had fallen. And Derek was left alone on a stage that had been stripped bare, with no audience left to applaud his lies. A few days later, I got a text from Sarah. "I'm so sorry," she wrote. "We had no idea. He's always been so good at spinning stories. None of us will ever listen to his lies about you again." I thanked her, and that was the end of it. I didn't need an apology from the whole family. I just needed the lies to stop. And they did. The last I heard, Derek had been given an ultimatum by his parents: get a job, go to therapy, and stop posting on social media, or find a new place to live. He had lost his job, his reputation, his freedom, and now his last remaining supporters. He had hit rock bottom, not because I had pushed him, but because he had dug his own hole, one lie at a time. As for me, I was truly free. The quiet in my apartment was no longer a fragile piece I was trying to protect. It was a solid, unshakable foundation. I had learned that revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about stopping someone from making you suffer. It's about reclaiming your narrative and refusing to let anyone else write your story. I had started dating a man named Evan, a kind, funny architect who thought my story was the most epic takedown he'd ever heard, and who, more importantly, knew how to load a dishwasher without being asked. We went hiking on the weekends, and I'd find myself at the top of a mountain, looking out at the world, feeling a sense of space and possibility I hadn't felt in years. The air was clean, the future was unwritten, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what would happen next. I had faced the worst of someone and had come out the other side not just intact, but stronger. The screenshot hadn't just ended a relationship, it had started a new chapter in my life, one where I was the main character, the author, and the hero of my own story. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all. Life after the Facebook implosion settled into a rhythm so peaceful it felt almost alien. The constant, low-grade hum of anxiety that had been my companion for 4 years was gone. In its place was a quiet confidence, a solid sense of self that I hadn't realized I'd lost. Evan and I were taking things slow, which was a refreshing change from the whirlwind. Intensity Derek had always craved. We didn't need to post photos of our dinners or broadcast every inside joke. Our relationship existed in the real world, in shared glances across a restaurant, in the comfortable silence of a long car ride, in the way he'd hand me a cup of coffee exactly how I like it without me having to ask. It was a partnership built on mutual respect, not on the need for constant validation. For the first time, I understood what it felt like to be with someone who saw me as an equal, not as an accessory or an obstacle. I had thrown myself into my work with a renewed focus, landing a promotion that came with a significant raise and a corner office with a view of the city skyline. I redecorated the apartment, not to erase Derek, but to reclaim it as my own. The cracked TV was replaced with a bigger, better one. The spot where my guitar used to stand was now home to a thriving fiddle-leaf fig tree. I painted the walls a soft, calming blue and bought new art that made me feel inspired. Every change was a declaration, a small act of saying, "This is my space. This is my life. And I am the one who decides what fills it." I even started seeing a therapist, Dr. Evans, a warm, insightful woman who helped me unpack the subtle ways I had learned to shrink myself to accommodate Derek's ego. "You didn't just lose a relationship," she told me one afternoon. "You regained your voice. The challenge now is to remember how to use it, not just in defense, but in joy." And I was learning. I reconnected with old friends I had let drift away, joined a book club, and even took a pottery class, where I discovered a surprising talent for making lopsided but charming bowls. My life was full, rich, and entirely my own. I had almost forgotten about Derek entirely, his memory fading like an old photograph left in the sun. He had become a cautionary tale, a character in a story I told sometimes, the details growing less sharp with each telling. That's why the email I received on a random Tuesday in October felt like a ghost reaching out from the past. The subject line was simply, "A concern regarding Derek Hayes." My stomach tightened, a familiar, unwelcome reflex. I almost deleted it without opening, assuming it was more drama, more lies. But something about the formal tone made me hesitate. I clicked it open. The email was from a woman named Dr. Eleanor Vance. Her signature listed her as a clinical psychologist. The email itself was short, professional, and deeply unsettling. "Dear Ms. Voss," it began, "I am writing to you under a strict confidence agreement, but I feel an ethical obligation to reach out. I am the treating psychologist for a patient who has identified himself as Derek Hayes. Over the past several weeks, he has constructed an extensive and detailed narrative in our sessions regarding your relationship and its dissolution. While I am bound by patient confidentiality and cannot disclose the content of these sessions, I can tell you that his version of events is both highly disturbing and, based on what I have been able to independently verify, largely fabricated. He has described you as abusive, manipulative, and financially exploitative, and has positioned himself as a victim of a calculated and malicious campaign. He has expressed feelings of hopelessness and has alluded to suicidal ideation, linking these yourself. I can be reached at the number below should you wish to discuss this further, though I must reiterate that I cannot breach his confidentiality. Sincerely, Dr. Eleanor Vance. I read the email 3 times. Each time, the words felt more surreal. Suicidal ideation. A public blog to expose me. He wasn't just spinning tales to his family anymore. He was weaponizing his own mental health, crafting a new, more insidious narrative with the help of a therapist. The fact that Dr. Vance had reached out was a small miracle, a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, but it didn't change the fact that a storm was coming. Derek, backed by the perceived authority of a psychologist, was about to launch his most devastating attack yet. He was going to play the ultimate trump card, the victim so broken, so wronged, that people would have to believe him. My blood ran cold. This wasn't about money or property anymore. This was about my reputation, my name, my very character. He was going to try to destroy me, not with a shoe or a lie to his parents, but with a carefully crafted, psychologically manipulative story designed to make the world see me as a monster. My first call was to Denise, my lawyer. I read her the email, and I could hear the sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Okay," she said, her voice all business. "This changes things." Needed to understand what I was up against. She was calm and professional on the phone, just as she had been in her email. "Ms. Voss," she said, "I want to be clear. I believe my patient is unwell, but I also believe he is being deliberately manipulative. He is using the language of trauma and therapy to build a case against you. He is a compelling storyteller, and he has found a new audience." She couldn't give me details, but she gave me something more valuable: context. "He feels he has lost everything," she explained. "His job, his family's respect, his home. In his mind, the only way to get any of that back is to reframe the narrative so completely that he becomes the sympathetic protagonist and you become the irredeemable antagonist. He believes if he can convince enough people, his reality will become the truth." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room, the city lights twinkling outside my window, and I felt the old fear creeping back in. This was different. This was bigger. A blog post, a video, it could go viral. Strangers could weigh in. My employer could see it. Evan could see it. My peaceful, hard-won life felt fragile, like a house of cards that Derek was about to blow down. But then I thought about Dr. Vance's email. I thought about Denise's confidence. And I thought about the file I had sent to his cousin Sarah. I had proof. I had receipts. I had the truth. And this time, I wouldn't be reactive. This time, I would be ready. The next day, I took a personal day from work. Evan came over and sat with me while I drafted a response. It wasn't angry or defensive. It was calm, factual, and devastating. I titled it, "The Other Side of the Story." My response to Derek Hayes. I didn't write it like a victim. I wrote it like a journalist laying out a case. I started with a brief, neutral summary of our 4-year relationship. Then I addressed his upcoming claims head-on. I am aware that Mr. Hayes is planning to publicize a narrative casts himself as the victim of emotional and financial abuse, I wrote. While I sympathize with anyone who is genuinely struggling with mental health issues, I cannot allow a false narrative to go unchallenged. Therefore, I am presenting the evidence that led to the end of our relationship and the subsequent legal judgment against him. Then I posted the evidence. All of it. I redacted the personal contact information of people like Marcus and Lena, but I included their statements. I posted the doorbell camera transcript. I posted Chloe's messages. I posted the bank's security alert. I posted the HR email. I posted the police report. I posted the court's final judgment. And, in a move that felt both risky and necessary, I posted a screenshot of Dr. Vance's email, redacting her name and contact information but leaving the core of her warning intact. I was recently made aware of Mr. Hayes' intention to publicize these claims by a mental health professional who felt ethically obligated to warn me. I wrote, "This is not a game. This is not a he said, she said situation. This is a pattern of manipulative and deceitful behavior that has now escalated to a public level." I didn't post it on my social media. I created a simple, free website and posted it there. Then I did one last thing. I found the email address for Derek's parents. I didn't write them a message. I just sent them the link. I didn't need to send it to anyone else. I knew Derek would find it, and I knew he wouldn't be able to resist looking. I pressed send on the email to his parents, and then I turned off my computer. I didn't check for responses. I didn't refresh the page. I went into the kitchen with Evan, and we made pasta. And for the first time in 24 hours, I felt a sense of peace. I had laid out the truth. The rest was up to the world. The blog post Derek had been planning was never published. Because the day after I posted my website, his sister Simone called me. She didn't yell.
She
Didn't accuse. She just said, in a quiet, tired voice, "We saw it, Brianna. We saw everything. We're so sorry. The war was over. I had won. And this time, there was no one left to fight. The call from Simone was the final, quiet click of a lock turning on a door I never intended to open again. After that, a profound silence descended, not just in my apartment, but in the entire digital sphere Derek had once tried to weaponize against me. He didn't post a rebuttal. He didn't launch a smear campaign. He didn't even try to create a new anonymous account to defend himself. The website I had built, a fortress of facts, had rendered him silent. It was as if by laying out the truth so completely, so unemotionally, I had left him with no material to work with. You can't build a house of lies when someone has already paved the foundation with receipts. Weeks turned into a month, then 2. The rhythm of my life continued, each day a little more vibrant than the last. Evan and I took a weekend trip to the coast, walking on the beach as the fog rolled in, sharing a thermos of hot chocolate and talking about everything and nothing. It was on that trip, sitting on a driftwood log with the sound of the waves crashing, that he looked at me and said, "You know, I don't think I've ever seen anyone as strong as you." It wasn't a line. It was an observation, and it landed with the weight of truth. I realized then that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. The strength I had used to fight my battles was now the strength I was using to build my future. I had almost completely forgotten the name Derek Hayes when I received a letter in the mail. It wasn't a bill or a piece of junk mail. It was a crisp, white envelope with a formal return address. Hayes and Hayes, attorneys at law. My heart gave a single, familiar thud, a phantom limb ache of a fear I thought was long gone. I opened it with steady hands, my lawyer's voice in my head reminding me that anything official required. Calm consideration. It was from Frank Hayes, Derek's father. But it wasn't a legal threat. It was a letter of apology. Dear Ms. Voss, it began, the handwriting surprisingly neat. I am writing to you today not as an adversary, but as a father who has been forced to see a truth he spent years avoiding. For a long time, I made excuses for my son. I saw his ambition as drive, his confidence as strength, and his anger as passion. I blamed others for his failures, including you. I was wrong. The evidence you presented, and more importantly, the pattern of behavior it revealed, was undeniable. It was a mirror I could no longer turn away from. I am deeply sorry for the pain my son caused you, and I am even more sorry for the part my family and I played in enabling his behavior. We failed him, and in doing so, we wronged you. There is no excuse for that. This letter is not an attempt to absolve myself or to ask for your forgiveness, as I know I am not entitled to it. It is simply an acknowledgement of the truth and an expression of my sincere regret. Sincerely, Frank Hayes. I read the letter 3 times. A part of me, the part that still carried the scars of the intervention, wanted to crumple it up and throw it away. Too little, too late. But another part of me, the part that was learning to heal, saw it for what it was, a man taking accountability. It didn't erase the past, but it acknowledged it. I didn't write back. But I didn't throw the letter away either. I put it in a box with the court order, a final piece of paperwork to close a dark chapter. The real closure, however, came in a way I never could have predicted. It was a Saturday afternoon, about 3 months after the website went live. I was at a farmer's market, a canvas bag slung over my shoulder, happily weighing a pint of fresh blackberries. I was laughing at something the vendor had said when I felt a pair of eyes on me. I turned and there he was, Derek. He was standing by a flower stall holding a small, sad-looking bouquet of daisies. He wasn't wearing designer clothes. He was in a plain t-shirt and jeans that looked a little worn. He had lost weight, and the angry, confident energy that had always seemed to crackle around him was gone. In its place was a dull, heavy stillness. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the entire noisy market seemed to fall away. I saw a flicker of something in his expression, shame, regret, maybe even fear. He looked at me, then at the blackberries in my hand, then back at my face. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it. He gave me a single, almost imperceptible nod, not of greeting, but of concession. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd without a backward glance. I stood there for a long moment, the vendor looking at me with a concerned expression. "Are you okay, hon?" she asked. I looked down at the blackberries in my hand, then back at the space where Derek had been standing, and a strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't satisfaction. It was pity, not for the man he had been, but for the man he had become. I saw, in that brief, silent encounter, the full weight of his loss. He hadn't just lost me, or his apartment, or his job. He had lost his story. He had lost the ability to perform, to charm, to manipulate. He had been stripped down to his core, and there was nothing left but the quiet, uncomfortable truth of who he was. I paid for the blackberries and walked home, the weight of the encounter settling over me. That night, I sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights, and I thought about the long, strange journey that had brought me here. I had started out wanting revenge, wanting to make him hurt the way he had hurt me. But the revenge I had gotten was so much more profound. I hadn't just exposed his lies. I had dismantled the entire system that allowed him to tell them. I had taken back my power, my voice, and my life. And in doing so, I had left him with nothing but himself. And as I took a bite of the fresh, sweet blackberries, I realized that was the most complete and satisfying victory of all. The story was finally, truly over. And I was free. Freedom, I discovered, wasn't a destination you arrived at, but a space you learned to inhabit. It was the quiet exhale after holding your breath for 4 years. In the months that followed the encounter at the farmer's market, my life unfolded with a simple, uneventful beauty that felt like a reward. Evan and I fell into an easy, comfortable love. We moved in together, not out of necessity, but out of a desire to wake up next to each other every morning. Our new apartment was brighter, bigger, with a second bedroom that I turned into an art studio. The lopsided bowls from my pottery class lined the shelves, a testament to my imperfect but joyful progress. I was promoted again at work, this time to a leadership role where I mentored younger members of my team. I found that I was good at it, at guiding people, at helping them find their own voice. It was a skill I had learned the hard way. Derek became a ghost, a story I told only when asked, a cautionary tale whose edges had softened with time. I had no idea what he was doing, where he was living, or if he had ever found the help Dr. Vance alluded to. And I didn't care. My world was so full of positive energy, of genuine connection and meaningful work, that there was simply no room for the negative echo of my past. I had built a wall of facts and then walked away, leaving the ruins on the other side. I never looked back, until the day a package arrived at my office. It was a medium-sized cardboard box, unremarkable except for the return address, a law firm I didn't recognize in a city 2 states away. My stomach did a familiar, unwelcome flip. I carried the box to my office, closed the door, and stared at it. This felt like a final, unexpected aftershock from an earthquake I thought was long over. With a deep breath, I cut through the tape. Inside, nestled in a bed of packing peanuts, was my old guitar, the one Derek had tried to steal. It looked exactly the same, a little dusty, but otherwise unharmed. Taped to the body of the guitar was a manila envelope. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was a short, typed letter and a folded piece of paper. The letter was from the same law firm as the return address. It was a formal notification of the dispersal of assets from the estate of Darlene Hayes, who had passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack 2 weeks prior. The letter was dry and legalistic, but one sentence stood out. The decedent, Darlene Hayes, specifically bequeathed the enclosed item to be returned to Ms. Brianna Voss, along with the enclosed personal correspondence. I felt a strange pang in my chest. Darlene, the woman who had looked at me with such contempt, who had called me ungrateful, who had defended her son's every lie. Her passing felt like the closing of a final, brutal chapter. I unfolded the personal correspondence. It was a letter, in Darlene's familiar, sharp handwriting. It was dated just a day before she died. "My dearest Brianna," it began. The words felt alien in her handwriting. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone, and my lawyer has followed my final instructions. I am sure you are surprised to hear from me, and I would not blame you if you chose to throw this letter away without reading it. But I am writing this not for your forgiveness, but for my own peace. I was wrong. I spent my life making excuses for my son. I saw his flaws and called them strengths. I saw his cruelty and called it passion. I saw his lies and called them misunderstandings. I did this because I was afraid of what it would mean to admit that my son, the boy I raised, was broken in a way I could not fix. When you stood in our kitchen that day, with your phone full of truth, you didn't just expose Derek. You exposed my own failure as a mother.
It was
Easier to call you a liar than to face that. For that, I am truly sorry. I know my apologies mean little, but I want you to know that in the final months of my life, I saw things clearly. I saw the man Derek was not the one I wanted him to be. It broke my heart. This guitar was one of the few things he ever admitted to taking from you. He sold it to a pawn shop not long after he moved back home. I found out and bought it back. I wanted to return it to you myself, but I didn't have the courage. So I am leaving it to you in my will. It is yours. It was always yours. I hope you can find a way to play it again, to make new music with it, music that is not tainted by our family's chaos. You are a strong woman, Brianna. Stronger than I ever was. I hope you have a life full of joy and peace. You deserve it. With deepest regret, Darlene Hayes. I read the letter twice, my vision blurring with tears I hadn't expected to cry. They weren't tears of sadness for Darlene, but tears of release. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the last word spoken in a long, painful saga. It wasn't an excuse for her behavior, but it was an explanation. It was the admission I never thought I would get, the acknowledgement that I hadn't been crazy, that I hadn't been the villain in their story. It was a testament to the fact that sometimes people see the truth too late. This moment, to this life, to this love. And as I played, I realized that the best revenge wasn't exposing a lie or winning a battle. It was living a life so full of truth and joy that the lies of the past simply lost their power. The music wasn't just coming from the guitar.
It was coming for me.
And it was beautiful. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and tell us in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed? And, of course, subscribe for more stories like this. Remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply letting the truth do the talking. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.